Hello there, welcome to my story tent. This is my story tent. Normally you come to my story tent, but this time my story tent comes to you. I'm going to tell you over the course of the next few days 4 stories, all about a party, a great party, a party that is being held in a castle far, far, far to the north, or to the south, or to the east, or to the west. All depending where you live. Now this castle is owned by a king. The king has a queen. He has a son, a prince, Prince Caspar. He has a daughter, a princess, Princess Tilda. He has all sorts of brothers and sisters, uncles, aunts, cousins, nephews, nieces. Everybody in the family lives in the castle. The castle is on top of a mountain, surrounded by a huge forest. In the castle there are other people. There is a wizard. There is a caretaker. There are chefs. There are cooks. There are soldiers. There are knights. There are many, many people in the castle on top of the mountain. Now the story I'm going to tell you today is all about the prince. Now the prince was called Caspar. Caspar is a typical 14-year-old boy. And as a 14-year-old boy, he hates doing anything that he's told. He does like to hunt, he does like to ride his horse, he likes to climb trees. But the king won't allow it. He says, Caspar, it's not safe to go hunting on your own. Caspar, you can't be climbing trees, you'll be king one day, it's unkingly. And if this wasn't bad enough, Caspar has an additional problem. He has a cousin called Thomas. Now Thomas is also 14 years old. And Thomas follows Caspar all around the castle wherever he goes. Oh, it's annoying, just as cousins can be. Every time he gets on his horse, a voice will say, "Oh, I can see him, look, there he is, getting on his horse, he's going hunting on his own, look, look, look." And the king will come out and say, "Caspar, you're not allowed." Or he'll climb a tree, and a voice will say, "Oh, look, I can see him, he's up a tree, look, there he is, up a tree, look, there he is." And the king would poke his head out of a window and say, "Caspar, it's unkingly, and you will be king one day." Very, very annoying for Caspar. So he came up with a plan. He said to himself, I am going to go exploring when no one else is around. So he got up very early in the morning, and normally at this point I ask you how early is early in the morning, and the answers I get are frankly frightening. But this time he got up at around about 4 o'clock in the morning. He looked up and down the corridor outside his bedroom. He went down the corridor, there was no one about at all. He went down through the kitchens, it was empty. He walked through the kitchens, sticking his fingers in various pots as he went and licking them. And he got to the door in a corner of the kitchens that he'd never seen before. He went through the door and down a corridor, a long dark corridor. And when he got part way down, he found a tapestry hanging on the wall. Now, as we know, behind every good tapestry is a door. He thought. He opened the door, and when he looked in, do you know what he saw? Absolutely nothing. It was pitch black. Thought Caspar, this is interesting. He closed the door, put the tapestry back, went back through the kitchens, back to his bedroom, and went back to bed. The next morning, he got up at 4 o'clock in the morning. He looked up and down the corridor, there was no one about. So he walked down the corridor, through the kitchens to the door in the corner. And when he went down the very dark corridor, he found the tapestry, but this time in his hands he had a torch. He opened the door, it's pitch black. He lit his torch and he held it up. He could see, stretching away from him, some stairs going all the way into the darkness. He started to follow him with his torch. He went down and 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 down until he got right to the bottom. And when he got to the bottom, he was in a cave. He looked around with his torch. All around the top of the cave were tiny little lights. They weren't lit. In one corner of the cave, there was a big pile of masks. They were of all the animals you can think of. Now, at this point, you would normally shout at me, all the animals you can think of. But because you're not here, you're there, I'm going to give you a chance. I'm going to ask you to shout out now all the animals you can possibly think of, and you may pause. So, all those animals you have just thought of, They were all represented by masks on the floor, but on top was one mask. It was the mask of a lion. Instinctively, Caspar picked it up and held on to it. He walked out of the cave through the trees of the forest that was below the mountain. He went through the forest, and in the trees were little lights all the way along. They weren't lit. He got to a clearing. In the middle of the clearing was an old bonfire. It wasn't lit, but it was gently smoking. Ooh, he thought someone's been here. I wonder who's been here. Could be interesting, this. This is like an adventure. I'm coming back. He walked back to the cave. He walked up the steps, still carrying the lion mask. And when he got to the top, he put out the torch and put the lion mask down. He poked his head out of the door behind the tapestry and he looked up and down. There was no one about. He walked down through the kitchens, but by now breakfast was being made. Cooks and chefs were everywhere. Servants were running around with trays. He walked through the kitchen, and as he was going up the corridor past the hall, a voice said, "There he is, there he is, I can see him, look, I can see him, look, he's late for breakfast." Oh, thought Caspar. Guess who it was? The king poked his head out the door and said, "Caspar, come in here. Why are you late for breakfast?" He said, "Oh, I'm sorry, Father, I overslept." The king said, "Oh, okay, sit down, I've got an important announcement." He said, "Today is Sunday. Next Saturday, there is going to be a big party in this very castle. It is for the princess, all the mighty warriors, all the knights, all the lords from all over the north, or the south, or the east, or the west, depending where you live, are coming to the castle, and we are going to have a huge, big party." Everybody around the table smiled. Uncles, aunts, cousins, nephews, nieces, all were very happy to have a party, except Caspar, who just grumped. The king said, "At this party, the princess will choose a husband, and she will marry him eventually. But I expect everybody to be dancing at this party. And to make sure that you dance and don't let me down, you are going to have dancing lessons. All male members of this family will have dancing lessons this afternoon at 2 o'clock and every afternoon for the rest of this week." Caspar said, "Really? Dancing lessons? I don't want dancing lessons. I don't dance. I don't like dancing. I can't dance." Thomas said, "I can dance. I've had lessons. I dance beautifully." And he did a little pirouette on the spot, which was faintly embarrassing. Caspar said, "Oh, I don't want dancing lessons, especially with him." But the king said, "It is a royal order." So that afternoon at 2 o'clock, Caspar went down to the great hall, and sitting there was the dance teacher. She was tapping her stick time to the music, and each member of the royal family was practicing their dancing. When Thomas danced, the dance teacher said, "Oh, you dance so well, Thomas. You dance beautifully. What wonderful dancing. You move like a spirit." And Thomas, with a big grin, danced past Caspar. It's Caspar's turn. The dance teacher tapped out in time to the music, and Caspar started to dance. "Oh," she said, "stop, stop, stop. It's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Prince Caspar, it is not 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, big foot up in the air. That is ridiculous. Do it again." And so Caspar did it again and again and again. And it was no better the last time than it was the first time. After his dancing lessons, Caspar went up to his room. He stayed there all evening. He waited until 11:30. Then he opened his bedroom door and he looked up and down the corridor. There was no one about. He went down the corridors through the kitchen to the room in the door in the corner. He went down the corridor. It was getting darker and darker. He found the tapestry, and behind the tapestry he found the door. He opened the door and there was the darkness. He lit his torch and he shone it. He picked up the lion mask. He went down the stairs. When he got to the bottom, all the little lights in the cave were lit. There were no animal masks left on the floor. He walked out of the cave, and as he did, instinctively he put the lion mask on. It fitted perfectly. He got to the clearing and he hid behind a tree. He peered out. What he saw was a huge clearing with a massive bonfire in the middle, and around it were loads and loads of people dancing. Amazing, he thought. All these people, wonder where they came from. And then a tall lady stood up. She looked and she said, the lion's here. Come and dance, come and dance. And a girl with an owl mask stood out from the crowd and held out a hand to Casper. Casper had no choice. He stood up and around the tree, and he went out and he took her hand and he started to dance around the bonfire. After a little while, the tall lady said, it's time for the dance underneath the stars, and the most beautiful music you've ever heard started to play. The girl with the owl mask took Casper's hand and they danced all around the bonfire. After a while, the tall lady said, it's time. It is time. And she tapped her stick on the floor, and everybody started to walk back to the cave. As they did, they took off their masks and then they disappeared into the forest. Casper waited until everybody had gone in, and then he went into the cave, up the stairs, took off his mask, put out his torch. Behind the tapestry, he looked up and down the corridor to make sure no one was around. And then he went back down the corridor into the kitchens, up past the breakfast hall, and as he did, a voice said, there he is, look, there he is, look, 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 there's Casper, he's late for breakfast again, look, look, look. Guess who it was? The king said to Casper, come here, why are you late for breakfast again? I was practicing my dancing, father. I understand you need it, said the king. Casper said nothing. That night he went back down to the forest again, checking all the time that he wasn't being followed, and he danced with a girl with the owl mask. He did this every night. Every afternoon he would go to his dance lessons. When Saturday came, all the mighty warriors, the Vikings, the lords, the ladies from all over the north, the south, the east and the west came to the castle on top of the mountain surrounded by the forest. The party was a huge success. Everybody was having a great time. Thomas was dancing everywhere, and everybody kept saying, oh, isn't Thomas a wonderful dancer? Isn't Thomas a great dancer? Look at him dance. If I could give him a 7 because we were judging this, I would do. But they didn't. The only person who didn't dance was Casper. He sat on the big table at the top and he said, oh, I don't dance, I won't dance, I can't dance. The king said, Casper, you must dance. Casper said, I don't dance, I don't like dancing, I won't dance. The queen said, Casper, please dance. And Casper said, I don't dance, I won't dance, I shan't dance. Even the princess said, oh, please, Casper, will you dance? And Casper said, no, I don't like dancing, not going to do it. And he didn't. Towards the end of the evening, a tall lady stood up. She said, your lords, your ladies, your majesties. And the king said, what is it? The lady said, would you mind if we played some special music for a special dance? And the king said, no, please do. And the most beautiful music you've ever heard filled the hall. And a young girl stood out from the crowd and she held out her hand to Casper, and to everybody's amazement, Casper took it. They went down onto the dance floor. They started to dance, and everybody said, oh, what a beautiful couple they make. What a wonderful dance that is. Oh, they are beautiful together. Only Thomas was a little bit miffed because no one was looking at him. At the end, when the most beautiful music you ever heard stopped, the king stood up and said, whose daughter is this? And the tall lady at the back stood up and said, she's my daughter. What a wonderful couple they make, said the king. One day, I think there may be a marriage in the air. And being 14, Casper went bright red. So did the beautiful young girl, but they smiled. For the next 3 nights, every night, Casper went down through the kitchens to the door in the corner of the room, down the long corridor behind the tapestry, down the stairs, into the forest to dance. On the 4th night, he was a bit too relaxed. He forgot to look up and down the corridor, and as he walked down the corridor, behind him was a shadow. He went through the kitchens and the shadow followed. He went down the dark corridor and a shadow followed. He got to the tapestry, he went behind the tapestry, opened the door, lit his torch, and went down the stairs. Behind him a shadow followed. Casper put on his lion mask. The shadow followed him through the cave. Casper walked through the trees and got to the clearing and immediately joined the big throng around the bonfire. The shadow hid behind a tree. He watched. Casper danced. The beautiful lady stood up and she tapped a stick and she said, and now for the dance underneath the stars. And the most beautiful music you ever heard started to play. The girl with the owl mask held out her hand to Casper. He took it and they started to dance. The most beautiful dance you've ever seen. What a beautiful couple they made. And from behind the tree, the shadow stood out. And the shadow said, "There he is, look, I can see him. This is where he's been. This is where he's been learning to dance. Ooh, he's not allowed out at night like this. I'm going to tell the king. The king must hear of this." Guess who it was? The tall lady was furious. "How dare you," she said, "interrupt the dance underneath the stars? You, a mere mortal? No mask? How dare you?" Casper said, "Oh, please don't hurt him. He's my cousin. It's Thomas." "Hurt him?" said the tall woman. "I won't hurt him. Oh, no. But I will teach him a lesson." And she looked at Thomas closely. And Thomas stood back, slightly afeared. The tall lady said, "So you like to spy? You like to come out at night? And you like to watch people dance? Well, that will be your fate." And she clicked her fingers 3 times. And Thomas's face went white and round and pale, and the whole of Thomas shimmered until suddenly he disappeared. "Where's he gone?" said Casper. "Where's he gone?" The tall woman said, "Well, he likes to watch. He likes to spy. He wants to watch us dance at night. Well, he shall, from now on." And she pointed upwards. And when Casper looked up, there above them in the clearing was the full moon. And in the moon was a face. And when you looked closely at the face in the moon, it looked like Thomas. And from that moment on, if you dance under the stars, you will look up at a full moon and you will see someone watching you. And that will be Thomas. And that is the story, just one story of the princess's party. I will be back to tell you more stories about this party. In the meantime, you can watch other storytellers online. This is a fantastic time for storytelling. We have Tag Team Tales. If you watch that, the most amazing storytellers will appear. You can watch the World Storytelling Cafe with a friend of mine called John Rowe and many others. They will tell you stories too. Check them out. I will be back to tell you more stories about the party. In the meantime, remember, tomorrow is another story.